Welcome back to Start with Hello, Conversations about Disability. Today's episode, we were going to sit down with Mr. Gary Spangler and find out a little bit more about his background and when he got started with Ability Ministry and even his vision for Ability Ministry in the future. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here, man.
So over the years, you've had many titles and many responsibilities since you first got started with Ability Ministry. I know that I have probably designed 2 or 3 different business cards with title changes for give us a little bit background on when you first started and what your initial role was.
Okay, well, just to start off, I have had 2 actual titles that were actually put into print, but the residents call me the big man. So I guess that's my 3rd title.
That's the most important.
That's exactly right. Well, I started in 2009 as executive director, and basically my primary role was to run the ministry. I had no previous experience with disability of any kind, but the board was mostly interested in getting the finances in order. And my previous work was at Delta Airlines. I led a team to develop an automated capacity and revenue management system for the cargo division. And can you believe it? Back then, they were just introducing computers. And I had 3 years and $10 million to get this system up and rolling. So when I was hired here with Ability Ministry, my role was to get some things in order. And it was a big job. In the first few months, I worried a lot. I mean, I started not sleeping well. And then my wife came to me one day and said, "Hey, this is not your ministry, it's God's. If he wants it to work, there's nothing you can do to stop it. If he wants it to fail, then there's nothing you can do to keep it from failing." So actually, I stopped worrying, and here it is about 13 years later, and we're growing strong, man.
Well, so I know your roles and responsibilities aren't something that fits easily in a nice, tidy format on a Word document. Really, if I had to describe your role now, it would be that final bullet point that you always see in job descriptions that says other duties as required. That probably sums up more of what you do. And I know that it would be probably nearly impossible to describe what an average day for you looks like. However, if you had to explain to somebody who had never heard of Ability Ministry what it is that you do, how would you do that?
Well, it is quite a task to label these things. And, it's actually quite a task for any of our leadership team because we're so small. We just have a few people that run this ministry and the wonderful things that God's doing actually through just the few of us. But my current responsibilities surround financial and maintenance. And there are some things I do to simply try and raise funds, seeking new supporters, that kind of work. But I also work with churches that currently support us. I assist Rana with coordinating mission trips that we'll talk about later that come to our Riverwood campus. We are a member, Ability Ministry is a member of the Evangelical Council for Financial Accountability. So there's a lot of things that I do to ensure the integrity of how our finances are handled and protected. And every week I work with the accountant, verifying deposits and expenses. I manage all of our credit cards that are distributed to some of our employees. And you got to remember, we are preparing over 12,000 meals a year. And that takes a lot of groceries, takes a lot of utensils, takes a lot of plates and detergent and things like that. Everything a kitchen needs to run, plus all of our equipment, stuff that we use every day, and materials that we have to purchase. So there are a lot of credit card transactions. And it is my responsibility to review each one of those to make sure they're valid. And I have a lot of other responsibilities, but that's probably a good general description of what I do. there's a lot of caveats that you can put underneath there. And I didn't mention anything about maintenance. Really responsible.
I was just about to say it's not uncommon to show up to Riverwood and see you driving a van somewhere, fixing a mower.
That's
or
correct.
Working on a fence or.
That's correct. I have some people that are really doing a great job helping me at Riverwood, but I am responsible to making sure that everything's in order. And anytime somebody's got a question about why is the toilet leaking, why do we not have hot water, those are the things that I have to take care of as well.
And I remember during COVID, and it just popped into my head when you mentioned. I had no idea it was 12,000 meals, but I am familiar with a little bit of going shopping for all of those supplies. And I remember in COVID, our director of services, Ronna McBride, sharing how it wasn't always a pleasant experience to go shopping for a group home during COVID. Everybody looks at you like you're a hoarder. Why do you have all the toilet paper? Why do you have all of this? And I think we actually developed a shirt that said, "I'm not a hoarder, I run a group home."
Yes, you do. You did. You made one so that she would have to, wouldn't have to deal with all the looks and the remarks that are made at the grocery store, at Walmart, or wherever. So
yeah, it's definitely not an easy task. So you mentioned you have a background in the airline industry. I think anybody looking at this would say airline industry, disability ministry. That's not always a straight line career path.
No, it's not.
I don't. You may be the only person that I know that worked in the airline industry that said, "You know what's next? Disability ministry. That's for me." So how do you end up how do you make that transition?
That is quite a story. I used to sing a lot at churches. I was in a Southern Gospel Quartet, and we did a bit of traveling, but I also did a lot of solo work. And a friend asked me to come and sing as they were having a special guest by the name of Jim Pearson. And as a matter of fact, I think it was the church that you and your future bride were attending at the time. It was quite a few years ago now. But I had heard about Jim Pearson and the Christian Church Foundation for the Handicapped. That's a big title for a.
Yeah, that's why we changed it, right?
Yeah. Well, my father had been on the board of directors, so I knew a little bit about it. But after singing, my wife Becky and I listened to Jim speak, and it was quite compelling. And still, I did not know much about this disability stuff. My cousin, she has cerebral palsy. But that's about it. And after hearing Jim, my wife and I made the decision to start supporting the ministry and was later invited to join the board of directors. And after being on the board for several years, Jim was ready to retire, and we were looking at his replacement. Man, we tried a couple of people, and nothing really panned out. And I had retired from Delta Airlines and was working as a consultant to 3 United States carriers and 3 international carriers for a company called Unisys Corporation. But after a couple of years, man, I just felt the Holy Spirit urging me to do something more than trying to help others make money. And I'd been praying for about 6 months, just asking God to give me direction. Maybe I was supposed to stay at Unisys. I wasn't sure. But one morning the phone rang, and it was Jim Pearson, and he stated the obvious, that we were not having much luck finding someone to take his place. And he said he thought I should be the one. And I'm telling you, it was like an answered prayer. And I immediately said yes. What was I supposed to do?
There was no hesitation at all.
There was no hesitation. I was so excited. I went next door to my dad's house, and told him, being on the board for many years, he said, "Are you sure they have enough money to pay you?" Well, that stopped me dead in my tracks. I said, "Well, I think so." I felt like George Costanza at that moment. I think, but I became the executive director in January of 2009, and boy, we were in a financial mess. My first job was to renegotiate every contract and get out of those that we didn't need, and everything went just about as planned. And then we moved our offices out to Riverwood to save money and hit the next thing, which was our Riverwood property that we just talked about maintenance-wise. Ron and I walked the property, and I had literally a list of 50 things that needed to be done. And so we proceeded to get that done. And but it's been great. It's been a great ride. I've enjoyed it tremendously. And God truly has blessed this ministry in so many ways. I couldn't put it on paper.
And so you mentioned Riverwood. So for those of you who are just now tuning in and this is your first episode and you have no idea what Riverwood is a residential home. It's our residential ministry outreach piece, I would say, located in Tennessee.
That's correct.
How many adults do we?
We have 20 residents that live there now.
20 residents that live there. And I know it's been a while, and we've talked on the podcast and off the podcast about how we initially had fears or apprehensions and how all of those have seemed to go away. So I know it's been a while, but do you remember your first trip out to Riverwood, what that was like, what you were feeling, what kind of emotions you had your first visit?
Oh, boy, do I. It was.
So it's that clear, huh?
It's that clear. It was disastrous, but it worked out great, as God always does work things out like that. My father and I were sitting on a couch waiting for the van to return from picking up our residents from work. Okay. And I bought into the idea, I hope these people don't hurt me, here, and so here they came, most of them walking towards me with their arms stretched out. They love to hug. They just, they feel that spirit and they just love to hug. My first thought was, here come the zombies. They're after me. So I freaked out a bit. But can you imagine the embarrassment that I now feeling that way? It's just like, how could I possibly misjudge this whole situation? But that's why we have trained people to react. It's amazing to me. The most relaxed visitors who come and meet our residents are young people, elementary, junior high kids. It's like they have not been taught how to look at people with developmental disability in a negative way. But now they truly are my best friends, and we can sit and laugh about that, and they think it's so funny. It's just, hopefully, Ability Ministry has done a lot to change those kind of attitudes towards people with disability.
You said earlier, and these are your words, you said you had no experience working with individuals affected by disability. So now that's all that you do. So was there a steep learning curve for you, or was this something that once you started doing it and you got over that initial fear, you thought, hey, this is it. This is what I should be doing? Or
Oh, this is, I'm glad you asked this question. And please remember, I came from the airline industry. This is another one of those embarrassing moments by not knowing what's going on.
It's only going to be recorded for the world to hear.
That's exactly right. We're caught in a catch-22 situation in the airline industry, okay? Half the group says, don't treat me like a herd of cows. While the other half says, why can't we board faster? I have to start my vacation. I've got this business meeting I want to. So it was definitely different. I remember one day I was with all the residents and we were going somewhere. I don't know if it was to Dollywood or on a picnic or somewhere. I'm not sure where. But everyone needed to get on the bus. And I'm waving, I'm flailing my arms, saying, hurry up, get on the bus. We got a schedule to meet. Move it. Ronna came up behind me and very politely and businesslike, she said, we don't work that way here. I can't tell you how many times I thank Ronna for that little comment, because not only did it make my working with our residents and people with disabilities so much easier, it really calmed me down, even in my driving. I mean, it's just every aspect of my life, I'm able to deal with things a little better, of just slowing down and taking my time and enjoying the moment and appreciating the moment that God's given. It's amazing how calm I started being just a few months around my friends at Riverwood.
And that's probably been something that's carried up until this day.
It is.
Even now, both you and I serve at Southeast Christian in Louisville, Kentucky in the Shine Ministry. I can't tell you how many times we have found out if we want it to happen right away and the other person doesn't, then it's not going to happen right away. There's no rushing. Happening. At no point, I don't think I've ever tried to rush this group and been successful.
Absolutely. Sitting or standing in a classroom with 15 who are totally different from each other, dealing with somebody who's got Tourette's, who's hollering out, somebody who's walking around, somebody who's jumping out, somebody who's sitting there studying and listening to the lesson. I mean, it's all these different things, and there's no way I'd be able to handle that had it not been for my opportunity of learning disability ministry through our residents.
It would be a great thing for any kind of leader to experience that. Do you think that would make somebody a better leader?
Oh yeah, absolutely. To understand, and it's a process, and I always tell people that this is really a crock-pot ministry. You have to take the time. You go through the ups and the downs. You don't get rattled. You deal with it. A friend of mine, Mary, who is the pastor, the disability pastor at Southeast Christian Church. Man, I've seen her times when people are practically attacking her, and she's just, okay, no problem. We'll just get through this.
Well, I've seen her attacked.
Yeah,
I think there was a family you and I were helping with. I can't remember. Were you in the elevator?
I was in the elevator.
So correct me if I'm wrong, you had to leave because of a family emergency.
That's correct.
And we were helping get this family upstairs to a separate room so the mom could go to church and not have to worry. And her oldest son, for whatever we still don't know, decided that's the great time to grab a hold of Mary and not choke her, but he put her up against the wall. And I remember just feeling like I've got to take action. I kind of tensed. Yeah. I think we all kind of tensed up and
absolutely.
Are we going to have to grab this guy? What's going on?
That's
and
right.
I remember it felt like she just took this deep breath and she said, "Oh, it's okay, guys. I'm okay."
And can you believe her eyes? Her eyes didn't show any excitement or frustration. I'm just going like, Mary, how do you do this?
She will forever be a Jedi master in my mind exactly for that moment. Right. But it depressurized that whole situation. And I can't think of few places that will train you for that. So anyway, your first role centered primarily around Riverwood Christian Community.
That's right.
You've seen a lot of people come and go. You've seen a lot of visitors. What would you say the biggest misunderstanding people have when it comes to the residents at Riverwood?
Well, I think the biggest misconception is that they are different. Now, the truth is they are different, but they're no different than you or me. I'm different than you. Everyone has their own isms, the way they like to do things. I chew gum different than you. And
according to our folks in the Shine Suite, you chew grass.
That's exactly what.
You make a lot of noise.
Just like a cow eating grass. That's right. But people like different kinds of food, different cars. And hey, there are people out there like different types of worship. I mean, stop and think about it. Some like liturgical or highbrow worship. Some like contemporary praise services. There are some, mostly out west, who like the cowboy style worship where they ride in on a horse and everything is country music themed. So I just wish that people would recognize our friends with disability as more like us than different, because they are different, just as you and I are different, and we're all different. Thank heavens that we are all different, because I don't know if I could stand if everybody was like me. It'd drive me nuts.
It sure does make it more fun.
It does.
We have a lot of very unique experiences, and I think it's because we're different from each other in a good way. So at one point, obviously you'd been working with Riverwood Ability Ministry for years, Riverwood Christian, New Hope Christian, all of that is great. And you're doing some wonderful work there. However, at some point, you felt this tug. You felt like there needs to be more. We need to be doing more. And so can you walk us through your decision to focus on outreach beyond the walls of Riverwood and New Hope?
Yeah, I sure will. I will admit that about 15 or 20 years ago, I'm thankful that God blessed me with the ability to accept that this life, the life as we know it, what's going on now, God's will is not based on or about me. Around 6 or 7 years ago, I met a man named Brian Wolf, his wife Melissa, and his kids Rocco and Zoe, and it changed my quote unquote disability life. Okay, I was striving so hard to share disability with churches that I really didn't even know what I was looking for. My vision had become messy, and I could feel the Spirit leading somewhere, but I didn't know where. And I sat and listened to Ryan as he talked about how many people there are in the world with a disability. 1 billion. I mean, how big is 1 billion? I learned that number is about equal to all of North America and all of South America combined. I mean, that is a lot of people. And I also learned that there are over 350,000 churches in the United States, but only about 10% of them have a plan to reach the disability community. So after pulling myself up off the floor, because I was shocked at these numbers, I had no idea, I realized the vision that I was missing was an enormous evangelistic effort that Ability Ministry needed to be leading. And I felt the Holy Spirit saying, it's time. It is time to start this evangelistic effort. And you don't know the first thing about reaching out to the disability community. Even after all those years, I knew how to react. I didn't understand disability ministry as such. And there was also an incredible tool now. You know, you got to remember, this is over the span of about 13 years. There was this incredible tool that could be horribly detrimental for society, or it could be a huge asset for the church. And that was the internet. I mean, I was batting zero when it came to technology and disability ministry. I just was striking out at every corner, and I knew something had to happen, something needed to be done. And that's when first I grabbed you, man. Our technology effort. And don't you dare say anything about how bad my design efforts were from our website.
I just remember the website. The only thing that ever changed on it was, I think it was a flyer for a yard sale. Was it a yard sale? Is that what that was?
Yeah, and it was on there for how long? I mean, it was like
way past the time of the event.
But anyway, I grabbed you and I grabbed Ryan to be the new CEO, president of Ability Ministry. We needed experts who knew disability ministry and how to get disability ministry into the hands of churches and missionaries around the world. I mean, I had no problem stepping down from being the top dog because I remembered what my wife said. It's not your ministry. And now we're in 43 states, 18 countries. We are on the continents of Africa, Australia, North America, South America, Europe, and Asia. The only continent that we're not on is Antarctica, and I don't expect us to be there anytime soon.
And we're definitely not traveling to there.
That's right. That's exactly right. We can use the internet, and we can use these resources that people can download.
We just had a download from Pakistan this past week, and it was our Easter lesson.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
I mean, it is just incredible.
It's beyond what I thought. I'm glad that you addressed it, because it's one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. Like, was it difficult to be kind of the head honcho and say, in order for this to really be effective for the kingdom, someone else has to lead this charge, which I can understand be difficult. So that was really cool that you addressed that. But how cool is it? Neither you or I had experience in disability ministry. And God said, hey, let's get these two and put them together. And we were able to take something that was located very small in Tennessee, and it's grown so much, a lot by the technology. And I feel like what we saw as our limitations have actually been used for to see God's will be done all over the world.
Absolutely. It's just great kingdom work. I brought this before our board, and said, hey, we need a change of direction. We need an evangelistic outreach that is incredible. Jim and I, when I was on the board of directors, Jim and I tried to do things. The my predecessor. But you know what? We didn't have the internet. We were printing massive books, costing us thousands of dollars trying to get it out there. It was just unbelievable. There was no good way to get it out there where people just happenstance, even people are just looking out there. So it definitely has made a change. It's a kingdom effort that is come to fruition in such a great way. Now, I will tell you, when I took it before the board of directors, I said, hey, listen, we need somebody with a new vision, a stronger evangelistic vision for this. And one of my friends on the board, she said, yeah, we only hired you for the financial piece anyway. It was,
all the pressure's gone. Right?
That's right. So it was great, but it's been an incredible story.
So for anybody and I think it's kind of funny, I don't think you and I sat down on our career path and said, when we hit this point, we definitely want to be all in on disability ministry. But for anybody considering a career serving those with disability, or especially disability ministry, what would your advice to them be?
Well, my first year was crazy. So, I mean crazy. And so if it seems crazy, it's okay. That's quite all right. I had not been the CEO for 2 months before I went to my first disability conference in McLean, Virginia.
I bet you felt really prepared for that.
Oh, goodness. Jim Pearson, he was there, my predecessor. He went with me, and he was a keynote speaker. He had a new book out. He was on a panel of experts, and boy, I really felt out of place. And at our booth, Jim was signing his new book, and the line was no less than 20 people deep. I mean, it was just, and I looked at my feet, and I thought, these feet are not big enough to fill Jim's shoes. And I was ready to resign. And when I told Jim, he looked at me and said, Gary, after 50 years of doing this, you will have your own stories. I looked back at Jim and said, hey, in 50 years, I'll be dead. And he laughed and said, yes, you will. But then he said, Gary, you love people. And if you love people, everything else comes in second. You will make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make big flubs. Just don't worry about it. You'll be fine. So my advice would be, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, because you will. That I can guarantee. And find it within yourself, though, to love people. No matter who they are, love them, and you will be fine.
An interesting point that you brought up was feeling like you had to fill Jim's shoes. And I think that would be natural with anybody. However, if somebody's getting into this and maybe they're replacing a predecessor, I would encourage you not to necessarily look at it like you've got those shoes to fill. They're just passing you the baton. You're running the next section of the race, which is your race to run, not their race. What you're doing is unique to you and to your experience and your growth, and it's not solely to fill. Sure, you had to carry some things on, but it was, if that baton hadn't have been passed, think of, where would we be?
That's exactly right. And, you're not there to fill anybody's shoes. I mean, that's the whole misconception that I had. With God on our side, He will lead you, if you let Him lead, He will lead you into the direction that you need to go and what you're going to do and how this new field of work or this new job responsibility is going to be. It's going to be yours. And, that was the worst thing that I remember. I love to preach, and there's times when I've preached, but there was a time in my life that I wanted to say, I want to preach like this person, or I want to preach like that person. And every time I tried to preach like this or that, it was disastrous. It was, a lot of people would say, oh, that was great. No, it wasn't good. It was, I was preaching somebody else. So I really came to a point then where it was like, okay, it's my sermon. I need to preach it. This is my ministry. I need to lead it. God had put me here for a reason. And so it was fine. And I made the mistakes and I overcame the mistakes. But you know what? To be honest, everything worked out the way God planned it. He knew the mistakes, and He knows the mistakes that these people, whoever they may be, in a career in disability or disability ministry, He already knows the mistakes you're going to make. And that's a pretty good feeling. And you should go in with that attitude.
In your time with Ability Ministry, you've certainly seen a lot of changes. What do you think are some of the most notable changes just in the disability ministry landscape over the years?
I would probably give you 3 different things. The first, terminology. That can really get people in trouble with themselves if they're not careful. I went to my second conference that summer of 2009. It wasn't too much better. It wasn't a disability conference, though. It was just a bunch of Christian people who would gather together every year. But I got blasted by 2 preachers' wives who had children with disabilities. Our booth proudly displayed our name, Christian Church Foundation for the Handicapped. I had no idea, absolutely no idea that term, handicap, had become so negative and hurtful. But I found out. I wish they had been a little easier on me. But at the fall board meeting, just a few months later, we changed our name, so that it did work. So be prepared to adjust the changes in terminology. And remember that there isn't always one terminology to use. You got to understand, be able and be willing to honor other people's terminology. It's one of those things. Diagnosis would be the second thing. The number of diagnoses is growing exponentially. Don't forget that disability does not affect just one person. It's their entire family, their set of friends, their circle of friends. It's going to be a tough situation, and it's happening more and more all the time. And everyone needs your help, and we must grow the number of workers, though. That's one thing when we talk about diagnosis increasing. We have got to grow the number of volunteers and people who are willing to work, because this harvest is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The third thing, or the last thing that I would say is change, is attitude. Everyone has an attitude, some good, some bad, some horrible. But just remember, the old adage is this: people don't care how much you know until they really know how much you care. And there's nothing that I could say any greater than that when you're talking about disability ministry. You have to truly care. If you fake caring, they'll see right through it. I don't know how they do it, but they will.
Especially this population.
That's exactly right. Attitudes have always changed too. And there will always be attitudes changing, and they can change for the greater. And if we push that and we encourage that, don't be afraid to change your attitude, as long as you don't change your doctrine. Love God and love people. And those are the 3 things that I've seen the biggest changes: terminology, diagnosis, and attitudes.
So I wanted to wrap up with this question. And to be fair for those listening, Gary doesn't know that this one's coming, and it's okay. Sometimes you've been throwing curveballs your whole career with disability ministry. Why should this podcast shouldn't be any different?
That's exactly right.
So there was a sermon, and I cannot remember what year he preached this, or even the title of the sermon. Dave Stone preached this at Southeast Christian Church, where he asked this question: what legacy are you leaving? And when he asked that, for some reason, that has stuck with me the second he spoke those words. So what do you want your legacy to be with Ability Ministry?
I want people to see a person who was not prepared for this as far as knowledge and training, a person who at one point in time was very concerned about getting somewhere on time, getting things moving, operating things 1, 2, 3, bing, 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 and seeing a group of people that he had never seen before. I have a cousin with cerebral palsy, but I really hadn't seen the disability population as my friends, as people who are so incredibly valued by God that he created them this way, and in him is his image. A person who experienced all these faults, but still was able to be significant. Matt Reagan at Southeast Christian Church always says this: God never asked us to be successful. He asked us to be significant. So if I can come away and be significant after all of these faults and obstacles before me, that's how I want my legacy to be remembered.
Hearing you describe that, that's how I would describe it to somebody else. Like long after you're retired, when you look back at the various leaders of the organization, I could easily see that. And I repeat that quote again from Matt Reagan.
Matt Reagan said, God never asked us to be successful. He asked us to be significant. And that's true. When you are significant, it's amazing how successful you are in the kingdom of God.
And I think that can apply to so many different levels too. Could be, some people may think, I want to be significant by running this big company. But what if we said, I want to be significant in this one person's life?
Absolutely.
And make an impact and start doing those things. That's real significance.
Yeah, it really is. And you can apply it to every facet of life. I try to apply it when I'm driving. If I'm trying to be significant in the lives of other people by not getting mad or getting frustrated when I'm cut off. How about this when somebody's looking at their phone and the red light's been green for 3 minutes? A toot is better than a honk, a blaring horn. And so just trying to be significant in all things. And I really believe that's kind of sums it up is what God's asked us to do. Just be significant in the lives of people.
Well, that's good. I appreciate your time. And we will wrap that up here. So for anybody who has any concerns or comments, you can feel free to reach out to us through our website, through abilityministry.com. If you are considering a career in disability ministry or just need to set up some consultation with Gary Spangler, you can also contact us there. We do offer free consultation. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you also are available to speak and preach at churches, correct?
Yes, I am. I love to do that. And it's a great opportunity to share what the Bible says about disability. We've got our one-page document, what the Bible says about disability, and I encourage people to go to abilityministry.com and pull that down. But it gives me a chance to address a full congregation and talk about really what God says about disability.
I think we even have one of your sermons on our YouTube channel.
Maybe
one of your recent ones.
It may be.
So maybe folks listening, this will give us Gary, don't kill me. If everybody books Gary to come speak at the church, we can fill up our YouTube channel videos. But,
there you go.
So anyway, Gary just mentioned the one-page documents, to give a quick plug for that. So abilityministry.com. You click up at the top at resources. We have a ton of freely available resources, regardless of where you are in your disability ministry journey. We have something there to help you out. So until next time.
Thank you.
This episode of Start with Hello is brought to you by Disability is Beautiful. 1 in 5 people in the world live with a disability, so it shouldn't be difficult to find lots of images to represent this. However, that's not always the case. Disability is Beautiful provides an exhaustive library of art provided by and for the disability community. Our photos reflect the beauty, diversity, and strength of the disability community. Whether you're a business owner, a content creator, or an advocate, Disability is Beautiful has photos for use in blogs, websites, social media, printed materials, business, nonprofit, or personal projects. Visit disabilityisbeautiful.com and create your free account and help us change the face of stock photography.